When is the right time? It will never be the right time. I think you just prepare as much as you can, and certainly when your inspiration begins to dwindle, it is beyond time. You better jump in and go for it. I thank you for being here. I love you all. God bless and welcome. Okay, what are we going to look at today? For the first 6 minutes, we're going to review last week's subject, especially the last part, Vega. In the next 6 minutes, we're going to talk about bricks and the discoveries made by Kairos. Then we're lightly going to touch on the Golden Gate International Expo, one that we have not touched on. And finally, we're going to discuss this Point Breeze Gasworks, something we discussed in a past video, perhaps proving that cathedrals were actually utility stations, at least in part. Okay, how to do this. This is a testing facility. I wanted to test the chunk that somebody kindly mailed me of the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, one of my favorite possessions. And they wanted $2,700. Cut a slice off of this chunk, test what it's made of, how much air is in it. I think I'll hold off on that. So here's what I'm looking at. Some Winnipeg. We will have discussed Winnipeg in a past video. And today I want to talk about Vega. Here this map says Vega in Virginia, or in Virginia. In the historical explanations of the phantom city of Vega, they usually put it up north a little more, around Maine. But here we see Vega in Virginia. I'm sorry, I have such a mess here. Let me zoom in. So you see this castle here, very early time period. Here up at the top of the map we see Nouveau Français, parts of New France. And down here, Vega. Seems like there's more of an emphasis on Norum, and then we have this Aga. But anyway, we see what seems like a bunch of towns down here as well, all named. Settlements. Here a little building, and here a building, kind of looking like a school bus. But anyway, up here, a building, and a super building. I don't care who you are, you recognize this as a castle. Nothing but a castle. Some tech on the top, about a third of the size of the castle itself. And the markings on a map are usually very insignificant. This is pretty serious. Super city in Virginia. And we should be able to find this, and we will. On this map we will have looked at last week, to the west of the Great Lakes we see this super city, Issa Tis Populi. And it's pretty super, in what I believed to be Winnipeg. Here to the north we see Lago something, maybe some of you know, and the Hudson Bay. We know that there's a star fort here today, and we don't see Vega here in the region of Virginia and Maryland. Not on this map, but we do see it on this one. Over here we see Tigwix, and over here we see Vega, what seems a little higher north. But what you'll notice in this map is there are no Great Lakes yet. Very meticulous charting, yet no Great Lakes. We see Shilaga, that I believe may be the old name for Chicago. And did some event wipe out this region? Something that perhaps blocked off these channels and created the Great Lakes. Now what I've done is brought Virginia over here. And here we go. And I'm going to say that this inlet is this inlet. And then a little slice next to it. We see a little slice here. And where does this lead? Again, if you look at the map, the castle sits in the middle of this delta, or these two rivers coming together. And over here we see a delta. Two rivers coming together, spilling into the sea. And up at the top here, what do we have is Washington, D.C. When I discussed this research, and even when I thought about it before I ever made videos, I thought of Washington, D.C., and how could any of this make sense in the earliest time period? Now, we've spent years looking at every corner of the realm that show the same architectural style built in the same early horse and wagon era. And here we are directed to this region from an old map, thousands of buildings that will hold this same small population, horse and buggy era narrative in a time when it should not be possible, logistically. Everything laid out to absolute perfection. Here we can draw a line from the memorial to this building. We have 4 miles of perfection. And just look at this pattern. The laser instrumentation that would be required to do this did not exist in this time period. This is not some haphazard design. This looks like the center of Paris, how all roads meet in the center, like a hub, like the spokes of a wheel, as if planned from above. And how about this building? Built in 7 years, from 1793 to 1800. 1793. And it's not just the building. This building cannot be looked at separately as the surrounding area. This is all built together intentionally with a greater purpose. And what do you think? Certainly that type of architecture, which can be found all over Washington, D.C., fits this bill. Certainly that capital and the complexity of the city layout. So is this just a fluke? Are we not to respect the map makers of the past? What about Mercator showing us the North Pole and many other map makers? So let me know your thoughts. Could this be the location of Vega? Okay, part 2. This could be its own video, and perhaps one day will be, but for now I want to try to put something together. Recently I went back to the Sunnyside Coke ovens in search of one brand of brick in particular. I've seen the particular brand all over the place, but what has happened to this site, and I feel partially responsible, is there has been a major cleanup operation since I've been visiting it, and essentially a removal of about 2/3 of the bricks. The place was absolutely littered with bricks, and now as you can see it's been cleaned up. I'm not sure who, quite possibly people that sell bricks. I'm going to show you one of those sites in a minute. Kind of makes me sick, but I'll try to stay on point. I could make the same case with any of these bricks. This is one of my favorites. It says Royal. Here we can see 2 halves, Royal, and we see the metal plate and the screw that would have held it into place right here. Similar to bricks we examined in a past video that look like chocolates. And this is in ruins in Utah. This is an orchid in a supermarket, and there was a pattern. A whole row of structures would have these star bricks. Another row would have these yo bricks that historically come out of Pennsylvania, as we'll have discussed in a past video. Yo. Star I haven't looked into, or Haws yet. Today I was looking for T-Car. I wasn't expecting to find Royal. It seems pretty clear. And I remember where my T-Car brick was now, but I'm not going to say it. I'm going to go there in a few days or review some of my footage. But here I want to look at Kairos Channel. And in this video he's near the Sutro Baths in San Francisco. And we can see just ruins, a wall in absolute ruins. And I've shown this before in a past video. I believe they call this the Sutro Heights. And what you see is a mountain made of bricks in complete ruins. It looks like just a mess. You see this man riding his bike isn't even thinking about the melted brick avalanche, as Kairos has called it. And here we're zooming in a little more, a little closer look. It begins to seem more brick-like. And it's all overgrown, and it's been cooked, And it's also been sprayed, parts of it. You can see the edge of where they have sprayed concrete over the top, cement kind of coating that they often do around roads to prevent rocks, we are told, from sliding on people. But in the parts where they haven't sprayed, we see these blocky bricks. And it's a great video. I suggest you check it out. So here again, we can see some bricks. And in fact, I've taken a bunch of screenshots of his video in advance. Here again, you can see the edge of where they stopped spraying. Kind of looks like a zoo. And what is natural? What has been left? What is actually not natural? Now we'll go to my photos of his video. Oh, the resolution is really poor for some reason. So here we can see bricks fusing into blocks, becoming sandstone. And here we go. This is the picture I was looking for. And I'm glad he captured this in the passing. T-car, a T-car brick fused into this mountain melt. You could see the mountain melt, and you can clearly see the brick. And if there wasn't the stamp T-car, I might have a difficult time convincing someone that this was a brick. But with the stamp, no problem. I think I took another screenshot. Oh, my computer is being shit. It is Mercury retrograde, and we can expect things to be a little sluggish. And we should embrace the sluggishness and relax and reflect. Here I've paused the point where the brick is shown in his video titled Melted Brick Avalanche Part 2, Sutro Heights, San Francisco, at the 3:35 mark, and here she is again, T-car. And I was very excited because I'd been running across the T-car bricks all over Utah. And here was one melted into the side of a mountain. We're not even told this is a building. This is supposed to be a mountain. And if I could find a babysitter for my cat, I would drive out here with Chief. And here we see another one on the same I Am Kairos video. This one is upside down, T-car. And this one is really melted, really blobbing out, but so thankful for the stamping of the brick, so that even as it melts and is upside down, we still recognize it as a stamped brick. And next we're going to get into the history of this T-car. It's not even an American brick. We're told this baby comes from Europe and was shipped, and we're in California here. I mean, think of the journey. I'll read you the narrative. I'll tell you exactly what they tell us. Sailed the ship around the Cape Horn, and here we go again, zooming out a little just to show you this melted mess that this brick was fused into. Here again, melted mess. This looks like some piece of metal that has turned to stone. And here we see bricks just popping out of the mountain. This is supposed to be a mountain. And I would love to talk about the glass beach not far away. While most people are exploring the glassy beach, which is super fascinating, the cliffs are melted and made of a similar composition. Here again, bricks and melt. And more bricks in right angles, what looks like may have been a window or doorway somehow. And this preserved the bricks inside. This little overhang preserved what we see in here. Preserved the building, essentially. The outside became marshmallowed, and the inside is preserved. This is way up on the cliff of a mountain. We are told a mountain. And here again, 1, 2 bricks in good condition. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know you're dealing with bricks. We just saw a stamped brick, and now we see the condition of other ones turning into what would seem natural if you weren't aware of what you were looking at. Here again, 2 bricks vertically, and another overhang and some sort of column. And I've been thinking about this video for a while, kind of non-stop since he made it. And I could analyze these photos for way too long, but I won't. I want to get into the story of T-car bricks, now that you've seen one melted into the side of this cliff. And here's Chief and I at 10,000 feet. Very nice to get away. And here is a website. And they were auctioning off this brick, this antique brick. It's sold on eBay, and they tell us this is from the Thomas Carr and Son location in Newcastle, England. 1827 to 1918, and he found the brick in what he believes is the site of the old Portland Glass Works in Portland, Maine, from 1863. It burnt down in 1873. He says most of these bricks have been exposed to what appears to have been very high heat temperature with mortar on the bricks that was red speckled, something I haven't seen before. He's trying to explain meltage without having a clue, but nonetheless, here we have the Lime Kiln Chronicles from the University of California, I think. Yes, Santa Cruz. And they're talking about the bricks lining our lime kilns are a special kind of brick, yellowish, used as a fire brick. Okay. They have names such as Cowan Snowball and T-Car. In the late 1800s, and this is the University of California, mind you, this should be the authority on where these bricks came from, most of our fire bricks were imported from Europe, primarily from Great Britain. T-Car indicates Thomas Carr and Sons, Newcastle, England. All were shipped 16,000 miles around Cape Horn to the west coast. It was surprisingly inexpensive to send bricks by ship back then, because they doubled as ballast or weight. It was cheaper to ship bricks by sea to California than to ship American fire bricks by railroad from the Midwest. One building can have millions of bricks, millions. Some of the cities that have T-Car bricks in Utah would now have to be brought by wagon from the West Coast, if we're to believe this story. And as Paul Harvey would say, that's the rest of the story. Of course it's not. Perhaps the University of California could tell us why there's a T-Car brick fused into the mountainside. Here's a little last-minute bonus. The Golden Gate International Expo was held from 1939 to 1940. We've talked about a lot of the fairs, but this one is less known, I think. Mostly because it's not on the mainland. It's out on an island, a square island, Treasure Island. It was a World's Fair celebrating, among other things, the city's two newly built bridges. The Oakland Bay Bridge, opened in 1936, and the Golden Gate Bridge in 37. Just banging out these bridges. The expo ran from February to October of 1939. Looks like they closed down for the winter and reopened from May to September of 1940. 17 million visitors came to Treasure Island. Here we can see a depiction of this little city built for a one-year expo. Massive, really. This is an exceptional structure. Let's look at some real pictures of it. But we see an old wall, an old sea wall here, really old. They had their own stamp, and this is called the Tower of the Sun. Here we can see it lit up in 1940. A little temporary city. And here we can see some images of it. And it looks kind of incomplete. Here we see a building that seems to be in ruins. They didn't bother with this one. And maybe some structures that they didn't need. And this one spans from one side of the island almost to the other. Newly planted trees here along the seawall. A lake, another water feature here perhaps. Tech. And it's all really teched out. All of this working in sync, having another purpose. And as beautiful as they are, just utilities. I've mentioned before the Sutro baths in San Francisco seem like utilities, waste disposal. Perfect. Now we just dump everything into ponds as far as sewer disposal. And in the old world they ran them into ponds with greenhouses, speeding up the process. But here this reminds me of a channel by the name of Geomancy, like geo, man, and see, like seeing. And anyway, he was looking at this Point Breeze gasworks today. I mean, in the mainstream, this castle is the Point Breeze Gas Works, and it has this crown, and we looked at it in a past video here, and I was baffled and said, what is this? And a lot of people weighed in, and it is so. This is Gasworks Facilities, and today it still is, but it's been dumbed down, and essentially this is some kind of mechanism that goes up and down, indicating the pressure in the tank, absolutely showing that this old world was utilizing this technology. But even then, it looked beautiful. Everything looked beautiful. Everything was ornate, unlike our modern power plants. So just utilities. I've also hypothesized that all the clocks on all the buildings, especially the cathedrals, sometimes 4 clocks on one tower, but anyway, the clocks seem to be pressure meters. Perfect. And we would turn them into clocks. Perhaps there was no time for these people. No need, at least, to care about every second. Just living in the moment. And if not, it should have been. But here we see another one to the left. And look at these buildings and the ship. So just to remark at the size of this thing. Just a massive tank with this super tech around it. A type of meter that goes up and down. And I recommend you check out his channel. I will put a link below. He really lines up all these sites really well, and in my opinion shows that these are working in sync. The whole grid. And here he's overlaid the energetic points to these structures. Really, really awesome work. Here again we can see the Point Breeze Gas Works that was shared by Conspiracy or Us. And it's a cathedral. They tell us the Gothic revival style, but no way. Look at these people. And this is actually perhaps the most honest the narrative has given us, calling these structures gasworks. Perhaps they had too many cathedrals. Perhaps this was just out of the way enough to not justify designating it as a cathedral. And then here I wanted to end with this picture shared by a friend Dave, and he has spotted the site of the World's Fair, including buildings, the Palace of Jewels, or I'm not sure what this one was called, but we can see it here. And we can see this dome in 1878. And we're told these structures were temporary and to be demolished, and here they are, well over 25 years before they were said to be built. Excellent find. But for today, I thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure sharing this. I love you all. God bless, and I'll see you next week.